It's so great to talk to you. We have the, we aren't friends, but we have seen each other a number of times over the years. And we have this shared...
Did you say we're not friends?
Not... Maybe I should rephrase that. We don't know each other really well.
Okay, that's better.
We're friendly. Fuck that. Just never mind. Whatever. Just a broad question to get things started. When the first Huey Lewis record came out, it was actually before MTV, but during those early 80s, that was a very distinct time musically. And like fluffy shirts and synths, and there was, even the tail end of punk. So why did Huey Lewis and the News happen?
Good question, really.
Because you were doing nothing like any of that was going on.
It's interesting to note that, when you think back to 80s, think about 1980, it was a radio world, and as you know. I mean, even when MTV first started, remember, their playlist exactly mirrored Radio and Records' playlist, which is interesting. It's why we got to see all those cringeworthy videos over and over and over again, because they were big hits. Yeah. there were a lot of, we all did silly things. But you remember the Pat Benatar Nazi one? What was that? They were going to save
Love is a
Goebbels
Battlefield,
and
Love is a Battlefield. Myron Grumbacher played a Nazi because Pat said, "Your name is Grumbacher. You got to play a Nazi."
But anyway, but
come on, we can't really talk about videos, can we? I mean, weren't you up to your neck in sand?
We did. Do you?
you.
And do you believe in love? I mean, actually, our story, it's kind of a funny story, because when we made these two little videos that attracted, kind of got us on our way, and when we finally had our first second record, "Do You Believe in Love," was our first single, and the record label really wanted us to make a professional video, so they hired a stylist, an advertising ad guy, to do it. And he designed this set with these pastel, torn fabric, kind of pastel-y yellow and pink and off blue. And the clothes we wore matched the pastel stuff. And then we had like makeup, and this is "Do You Believe in Love," where we're in the bed with six of us pointing to the girl.
Yeah.
So we do this video. And it's a big budget video, or reasonable big budget, and we film it all. We film it all day, and now we go to the record label go to Chrysalis Records to see the playback, the rough cut, and then in the room is 10 people from the label, probably 10 people from the video, and 10 people from my band and us, and now they make the announcement that this is just a rough cut. That when they colorize it, it's going to look way better and all that. But here's the rough cut. And they shut off the lights and they play the video, and my heart just sank. I just went, "Oh my God!" It was the worst thing I'd ever seen. The guy was singing off into the air somewhere. There was no story. Then now they're all in bed with the girl. I mean, what was going on here? No direction. I just I just was so downtrodden. I thought, "Oh, this is terrible." And as soon as the song ends, lights come back on, eruption of applause, standing ovation. Everybody loved it. And I said to myself, well, clearly anybody can do this. There's no good or bad to this video thing. So we're going to do the videos ourselves from now on. And that's how we got into all that.
What was that a weird thing? I remember with a lot of bands, especially bands who had been around for 20 years before MTV, it was a difficult thing to, you're like a great rockin' bar band. Video.
Right.
I gotta be on,
Right.
what? How difficult was it for you to get involved with that?
Well, as a songwriter, it's a problem because you're telling the story with the song.
Yeah.
And now you have to retell it with the video.
Yeah.
So what we tried to do was stay away from the song. If the song zigged, the video would zag. And avoid a literal translation if at all possible, and just goof around San Francisco and let the seagulls chew the scenery, you know. And that's kind of what we did. You know, it's also interesting to note how things were different in those days in terms of the radio. We talked about radio.
Yeah.
There was no internet. There was no jam band scene. There was only one avenue to success, wasn't there? And that was a hit single. Right. It was CHR radio, was absolutely king.
Yeah.
And so, you know, recording-wise, we wanted to produce our own record. And Terry Ellis, who's here tonight, allowed us to do that, which was a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. And when we did our sports record, because we knew we needed a hit single. That was the only way we could exist. This was our third album, and we had to have a hit single. And so we wanted to produce it ourselves and make all those decisions ourselves. And we aimed every song right at radio. Mm-hmm. And now when I listen back, I look at sports, and I realize it's a record of its time. It's a collection of singles. And that's what the Climate one was.
But a record of its time. It's funny because to me, it was not based on what I was saying before. I mean, XTC and Culture Club and Blondie, and there was all these other bands. Huey Lewis and the News was just something separate, and I feel like that's why we can all still listen to those records today, because they're as cool now or uncool as they ever were.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's some truth to that. Our stuff was anachronistic then.
Yeah.
And it still is. And it's interesting because my dad was a jazzer, so when we started to write pre-MTV, we didn't want anything to be time sensitive. We wanted to write songs that were timeless, like great songwriters have always done. And so, interestingly, some of the songs we wrote in our 20s and 30s are actually more appropriate for somebody in his 40s and 50s or 60s to sing.
Stuck with you.
Exactly.
And there's something on
horrible sentiment.
But you were happy about it. It's a beautiful thing. And on this record, you're still doing the same stuff. While We're Young.
While We're Young.
It's a similar sort of area, right?
Kind of, yeah. Well, While We're Young is a song, about life sung by somebody who isn't all that young.
Mm-hmm. It's nice that you can do that now.
Yeah, I mean, that the hard part are the songs, right? Because songs are gifts; they have to come to you. I mean, and especially at this ripe old age, I mean, you can't write about cars and girls anymore. You gotta find something that's real for you.
Right.
That's true, and that's what we got.
I was going to ask you about the music that you write, the music that wound up on the News records. How personal were they? How much? I feel like I never really got to know Huey Lewis from what he was writing about.
The truth is, almost all of the songs that I've written or been given, from the Muse or whatever.
Is that the way you regard it?
I do,
actually.
I do.
It comes through you.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Because you can't conjure it up. You try and but they all seem to be inspired by something personal. Mm-hmm. But then I just blow them out. Right. I just put them on steroids and just have fun. Like Remind Me Why I Love You Again is a case in point. I mean, anybody in any relationship has a point where the other person does something they think, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? So that's just that blown out.
And there's a lot of songs, Remind Me Why I Love You Again, Her Love Is Killing Me on the new record. Does Huey Lewis have an issue with relationships?
Apparently. It's a very good question. I'm going to see my therapist about that. It's good.
But unlike some artists, I think, who use their music as therapy or to get emotions out and to try and make sense of things. That's not the same for you, is it?
Yeah, I think so. So I think there's some of that. I mean, our stuff tends to be up more than down, only a little bit. But you know, the happiest music. I mean, that's the music I grew up on. I love rhythm and blues music.
Right.
And when it occurs to me, the happiest music, the happiest American music, comes from the people who have nothing. And the whiny stuff comes from, you know, rich white art students. I mean, and I just I've always been I mean, I like to cheer people up. You know, the blues is something that you have, and then you play to get rid of the blues to feel better.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of songs I like to write.
Yeah.
If I can, you know.
You grew up in Marin, and you grew up in, hello.
Nobody really grows up in Marin.
You stayed a child in Marin. And you grew up at a time when Marin in San Francisco was famous for a certain kind of music.
Right.
Where did you come down on the Jefferson Airplane and the Dead and all that crazy shit that was happening?
That's good. That's good, Mark. That's a very good question, because you're right. My band was kind of the psychedelic music backlash, because in many cases my mother was a huge Grateful Dead head, and our older brothers and as a band, our brothers and parents and so on were all into the psychedelic scene.
Right.
So we had to find a music of our own. And we gravitated towards soul and R&B music simply because it was a great, not only because, but largely because there was a great radio station in Oakland called KDIA, still is. That's the one and only sister station for WDIA in Memphis that I now know. So in some cases when Stax Records would release a single, the first two stations they would play it on were WDIA and KDIA. Mm-hmm. And so we heard vintage R&B stuff like Rance Allen Group that nobody's ever heard of, and also great R&B stuff, early James Brown cuts that most people didn't have, and all kinds of neat stuff. And so that was our thing. We looked like hippies, but we were raised on R&B music.
So that was you completely ran against the grain of how did you get gigs? Who would book the band? You're doing like doo-wop and
well. The inspiration for me actually was earlier. I was in a band called Clover, and we were signed and we lived in London. And the day we landed, punk hit. And punk was a huge inspiration for me because my voice was not 70s radio worthy. I mean, I like R&B stuff.
Right.
But I wanted to make a living in the music business. So Clover spent all our time grooming ourselves for the record labels and trying to fit into whatever mold, was going at the time. And the punks just blew that out. They were thumbing their nose at the music industry and saying, hey, we don't care. We're just gonna play our own songs. We're gonna sing them with our own funky voices, and we don't care. And I thought, wow, how liberating, right? So I vowed that if Clover ever broke up, I would do that. I would take that stance. But I would do it with the music that I liked, which was more rhythm and blues based, and horn players, and and enough screeching guitar. Less screeching guitar, more horn section.
Harmony.
Yeah, harmonies, doo-wop a little bit, R&B stuff.
So I mentioned your folks, and I mean, again, you were growing up at a time in like the epicenter of that movement, of the hippie movement, and of rock. I mean, what we came to know, was really, it came out of there. Mm-hmm. And what musically, you said your dad was a jazz musician. Your mom was kind of eclectic. She was a poet, I guess.
No, my mother was an artist.
Artist.
Yeah, my mom. Yeah.
That's a very kind of creative household, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Although my dad was a doctor by profession, but his hobby was music. He had a set of drums in the living room, played piano, and loved big band jazz. And he played drums for Ralph Sutton from the World's Greatest Jazz Band, one of the greatest stride piano players ever lived. Him and Willie the Lion Smith, probably the two greatest stride players that ever lived. And so he would run these jam sessions on every Sunday. My mom would make a bunch of spaghetti and get a bunch of red wine, and all the Ralph would play, Eddie Figueroa would play bass, Byron Berry on trumpet. We had Ben Webster one time sat in, and it was just a great thing. And the joy that that these guys had was fantastic. That's what my last song on this record, One of the Boys, is all about. It talks about when I was 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I was my old man at these Dixieland sessions. So
But that was a song you wrote for Willie Nelson. And
that he never heard, I don't think.
Oh, he never even heard it.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
That one struck me, that one, because it seems like an outlier to the rest of the record.
Right.
It's clearly was written for somebody else.
Right. Well, except that, I mean, the story is there's a great record producer called Dave Cobb, who's the
Legendary country. Oh my God,
he's great,
unbelievable.
And we have a mutual friend, and so we had lunch in Nashville, and he flattered me by saying, he said, I'm going to produce a Willie Nelson record, and I'd love you to try and write a song for Willie. I said, excuse me? No, we'd like you to write a song. I said, really? Well, great. And I just thought he was kind of just, shining me or something. But 2 weeks later, I came up with this. I woke up with the song mostly whole in my head, and we demoed it up. I got Johnny, my partner, and we demoed it all up and sent it to him, and he loved it. But I don't think he got the gig. He never got the gig, and so I don't think Willie ever heard it. I changed the words a little bit because I know Mickey Raphael, Willie's harmonica player, is a good friend of mine. So when he liked it, I called Mickey, and Mickey said, yeah. I sent it to Mickey, and Mickey said, here's some references to put in for Willie, which I did. Gave it to Dave Cobb. He loved it. Didn't get the gig, so I changed the words back to the way I had it originally.
Yeah.
And Bill Gibson, our drummer, says, I think we should do it. I said, well, I don't know. And then I listened to the song again, thinking, should we or shouldn't we? And I realized that the lyric, which I had written for Willie, was exactly my story.
Your story. Maybe the most personal song ever.
That's true. It is, actually.
See, and I, in my mind, I feel like you let a golden opportunity pass by you. Yeah, what was that? You could have written a divorce record. You could have written a divorce record. Divorce records are...
The big?
They're huge. Phil Collins' first solo record, one of the great divorce records of all time. Blood on the Tracks, Dylan, divorce record, incredible. You let that slip by you.
I can still do that. I still got that.
It's still there? That's what I mean, though. That's the kind of a thing that you go through this stuff and it's just gotta come out of you.
Yeah.
But for you, it comes out because you've said you're a cup half full kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's still inspiring to me. Stuff still starts in a personal. I mean, remind me when I love you again, right? This is, I'm blue, you're red. Thank God we got a sleep number bed. When I get hot, you turn cold. Sometimes I wonder if you're digging for gold. The idea being, what is it? You don't cook, you don't clean, you can't even
work a washing machine. Yeah.
You can't. You can't stand spicy food. I like modern. You like modern country. I like rhythm and blues. With nothing in common, should we even be friends? Remind me why I love you again. Idea being that in any relationship, somebody does something where you go, right? So I just take that and blow it out of proportion.
Right.
That's all. The inspiration is just the seed, and then I make it up. Just make it up.
There's 7 songs on Weather, which just came out this past
Only
Friday.
7.
Only 7.
But Kanye only had 7.
That's true. But then again, he kept on going online and messing around with the stupid thing. He kept on futzing around with it and adding songs.
Oh, really?
He wouldn't leave it alone. It was never finished.
So I better leave it alone, or should I add songs?
Well, I'm sure we'd love to hear some more songs, probably. Maybe not. I don't know. That was golf applause.
The real answer is which song, or how good is the song, right?
Right. Well, the songs that wound up on the record, we know that you've been talking at length about your diagnosis with Meniere's and the difficulty that that's presented in terms of singing and so on. But the songs that wound up on the record, what's the history of those? Are they all songs that you've had around and that you worked on before the diagnosis, or what's the status on those?
Yeah, they were all cut before 2 years ago when I lost my hearing. Over a long period, we were, I mean, the song is the hard part, and we're not the most prolific bunch anyway. And we were, playing 75 shows a year, which with road is what, 125, 130 days on the road. Plus we have lives, and so it's tough. And most importantly, you need a song. You need a true, real song, songs need to be about something. They need to mean something, and that's hard to find. So what we were doing is, as we had an idea, we'd cut it and just put it in the can. And the idea being that we would, when we had 10 songs, we'd release an album, which we've always done. And we weren't in a hurry because I reckoned that as long as we were good, and we were actually better than we've ever been, that we'd be fine as long as we were good when we came out. And then lost my hearing a couple years ago, waited a year to see if I could recapture. And when I didn't, we decided to, share them with the fans.
How completed were they, these songs?
How completed?
Yeah.
All recorded, but not mixed.
Not mixed.
But we mixed, interestingly, before my hearing went out, we had these 7 things. And we've used Bob Clearmountain to help us mix forever. There's nobody better. And he's very busy. And so I kind of contacted him, and he said, well, I got a block of time here. So I thought, let's mix those 7 up just for the heck of it, just because we got them. And then we'll have them if anyone wants to hear anything. So we actually had them all mixed up before I lost my hearing.
Kind of lucked out, right? But part of it's at this point it's legend. You've done a lot of press for this record. I think everybody has probably heard parts of the story about your diagnosis. That concert, that famous concert, January of 18, was it?
Yep.
But for you, the musician, for you, the guy who has been doing this for your entire life, what happens next in terms of your creativity? Are you still writing songs? I mean, you're still hearing them in your head.
Very good. Very good.
So what happens?
Yes. There is a small silver lining to not being able to sing to music right now. One of those things is not being on the road playing 5 shows a week. That's not something I miss. But I do miss playing a show every now and then. And mostly I miss the camaraderie of our circus, the 25 people that become our traveling circus. And that's just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
That was the other part of it, that every band has a bunch of people who work for you. They depend on you. And I have to admit that that was probably...
And the frightening part is I've never been the greatest singer in the world, but I am one of the most reliable. A handful of gigs I canceled because of my voice. I got a tough voice and here I bail, I just felt like I let everybody down, So that was a recovery process. It was a couple of months. I laid in bed, I fasted, I lost 18 pounds. I tried all these different protocols and steroids and all kinds of stuff. But eventually, you kind of get used to anything. And I'm now delving back into creative stuff. We've got a musical that we're putting up.
So is that, because that's one thing. I've dealt with a number of musicians who have brought things to Broadway.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare for most of them. Has this been a pleasurable, creative experience for you?
It's been a wonderful experience for me.
How so?
Wonderful, because, first of all, Brian, I came on board originally because, as a producer, because I wanted to look after the music. I want the music, I don't want, you're worried, how's the song going to be handled? How's it going to be treated? But our music director, Brian Yusufer, is brilliant and gave each of the songs a sort of unique setting, sort of a new setting. And so that was good. And then, so I got involved not only with him, but also, because I'm not on the road all the time, in the actual play with the writer, John Abrams, and our producer, Tyler Mitchell. And the best part about it, and so I've been involved in really every aspect of it, and the best part, the part I enjoy the most is the people. They are, I mean, Broadway actors are so talented and so smart and so funny and so generous and so much fun to be around.
Well, you went to college. Didn't you always want to hang out with the drama kids? You always went drinking with, they always had these songs that they sang.
Exactly. Exactly.
You were a blast.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's got to be a nervous thing for you as an artist to hand your songs over to somebody and say, okay, and it's Broadway. I mean, there's a very definite thing that happens on Broadway.
And it's careful. It's a bunch of little things, but you have to be careful. We changed, you know, we wanted our show to be a real musical. You know, sort of as opposed to a jukebox musical, if you will,
right?
Where you don't just play the songs, where the songs really are ingrained in the story.
So they like a regular musical, they sort of further the story and so on.
So we've rewritten a lot of them. I wrote a new song with Johnny and Brian Yusufer called "I Want to Be Someone," which is the centerpiece of the whole show, and you know, we've really taken great effort to rewrite them, but not lose their original feel, and incorporate them into the song.
And it was workshopped in San Diego.
We put it up at the Old Globe in San Diego.
And it was
6
huge,
weeks.
right?
Great, sold out. Got 50 standing ovations, great reviews, and now we've just partnered with Tony Woodward Award winner Hunter Arnold, who produced the hit Hadestown just recently, and we're going to bring it to Broadway next season.
Yeah. Is that? Can you say? Do you have a theater? Can you say?
I can't say that.
Okay.
I can't say that. I'm not allowed to say that.
Fair enough. And that means that you're happy with the story as it is. You're happy with the way that the songs are used, and you feel that your legacy is preserved.
Well, I'm very happy with the way the music's been handled. I mean, Brian did a great job, and we're still working on the actual show. It's been, you know, I mean, it's a work in progress. We put it up in San Diego, and then we workshopped it here in New York, and rewrote a bunch of it, and it got even better. And we'll probably have one more pass at it.
Casting? Not yet?
Yeah,
Some of the San Diego people?
We love our cast.
Yeah.
We cast here in New York, but you know, at such time as we put it up, we'll see who's available. You know.
I want to back up a little bit to, you know, how a creative person deals with a person who's been in music and winds up with this disease or this condition. Right. And I'm sure you know. I know 3 or 4 people over the last 10 years who have turned up with this.
Right.
And I know that no one knows what or why or how to cure it. But it seems that for a guy who is creative, for a guy who has made his life in music, that do you find another place to get this creative outlet? Golf?
Sure. Well,
or
no. Yeah. No, and it's a different creative outlet.
Thing.
I'm writing more a little bit. I have a television show thing that I'm working on a little bit with some people in Hollywood that you know, that's very developmental stages.
Script. So you're right. I mean, you have a sort of a show concept that you're working on. That's
right.
That's an interesting place to go.
Yeah. And I got, and we're doing. There's a great filmmaker here called Kurt Kenny. He's here tonight somewhere.
Yeah.
And he's doing a documentary that we're working on as well. And so, you know, I'm trying to stay involved creatively. That seems to be the important thing for me, to stay creative, stay busy, and really to remember that in spite of, you know, this, I'm still a lucky guy. I mean, there's so many people that are worse off than I am. And I get so many,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you're applauding for the people who are worse off.
Really. And not only that, I get tons of support from my fans and letters and now I have time to kind of absorb that a little bit. And it's just so gratifying to see what your music can mean to people, you know? Great.
Do you made the decision over the course of these years to put these new songs together? I mean, you could have gone on, this diagnosis aside, Huey Lewis in the News, you could tour until you dropped. You were that kind of band, you had that many hits.
Right.
You can go out there and continue to do that.
But you know, as a storyteller, you need a new story every
Well,
day.
I was going to say, how important is it for you to put out new music?
Story. Huh?
How important is it for you to put out new music?
Very important. You know, I mean, very important. You don't need a lot of it, but you need, 2 or 3 new songs in a set that you can look forward to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's important to rearrange stuff and keep it fresh and move it around. Mm-hmm. It's important.
Let's talk a little bit about the live show, because if I'm sure people have seen Huey live, right? Sometimes.
Hey, Mark, they're seeing me live right now.
That's true. Good point. There's no way that you walk out of one of your gigs not smiling, right? And it seems as though you guys that's what you set out to do when you get on stage. But here you would be all these years later. Is there something in you that you would go, let's change this up a little bit? Maybe, flash pots down front, fire, or, confetti, or is there something that you think you could modify? Is there another direction you would want to go if you had the opportunity?
I don't think so. I mean, one thing I think I would do more is I always like when you get a gist of the performer's personality more, and I think too often, and I was always warned against this: don't speak, don't just play the songs, and just play the songs. But I actually think when I go to see shows, I'm more interested in what the guy says between songs. I know that sounds strange, but I get more of his or her personality when they talk to me a little bit in between. So I think I would go less with the show and more with the improvisational aspect of things.
And I'm sort of just riffing here. What about, you've done a ton of acting.
Right.
Fair amount of acting.
Yeah.
Done some really great stuff. You've worked with some amazing people on screen.
True.
Being a storyteller, maybe there would have been a one-man show. Huey telling...
I like it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Unless Quentin Tarantino needs me for something, I'm...
Yeah.
No, I act. I really enjoy acting. It's really fun, especially when there's, real acting required, and it's very challenging. There's a lot of sitting around in your trailer, but it really is challenging, and I like it. And I'm flirting with a couple things,
Is there the same sort of nervousness because of the condition that, what if I'm having a bad day when I'm due on the set? Is that a thought, or is that not an issue?
I don't think that's going to be a problem because, acting is the most important part of acting. The most important part. There's lots of more, but one of the most important parts is reacting.
Right.
Right? Because saying your lines is no problem, but when somebody else says, "Hey, your dad just died," and first of all, they're going to say your dad just died, but you have to react to it like you just heard it. So you have to know their lines as well. So you have to know everybody's lines. So you really don't even, you got it all in your head. You don't really need to hear anything, in a way. You know what I mean? When they're done.
Yeah.
Boom. Deliver your line.
I wish my acting coach was here right now.
to be true, listening is important.
Yes.
And it modifies your response. But I'm saying you can act without hearing great. You can't. Music is 100 times harder to listen to than speech, because even one note occurs in all frequencies with harmonics and overtones and everything else. So what happens to me, even though, and I'm having a pretty good day, I'm a 4, maybe 4.5 today.
You have your 1 to 10 scale.
1 to 10 is when my left ear, which is my only fluctuating ear, when it's bad, the lower frequencies fall off the cliff and they distort. So I get, so a bass part, which should go boom, 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 goes, and it's just cacophony for me. Yeah. Music, but I can still hear speech if it's in a small little range.
And how, I know if it were me, and I couldn't even, forget about playing with a band on stage that it's loud, I understand that, but what about being able to, listen on your
talking to phone. I have these hearing aids that in both ears. Thank you, Starkey Hearing Institute.
All right.
And they Bluetooth to my phone, they Bluetooth to TV, and they Bluetooth to anything I want to. So, in other words, I can talk on the phone and it comes in here. And that makes it easier to hear. But when my hearing is bad, I can't hear that either.
I know that you live in Montana.
I do.
On a 500-acre ranch, I've read.
More cheese, less rats.
What do you do out there?
I fly fish a lot. I ride my horse. We hike a little bit. But fly fish a lot.
Are you a solitary guy? Is that
kind of
where you're at home?
This hearing thing I'm not. I was very much a social guy, very much a team guy and a social guy. But this has changed everything for me, because when my hearing is bad, I'm better off by myself, where there's nobody not to hear, and I don't know that I can't hear if there's nobody to listen to. So when I fish and everything, I'm just fine. So I've become more of a solitary guy, reading a lot more, I don't watch television, haven't watched TV for a long time. I can't hear it properly.
Right.
Even though I'm Bluetoothed, it doesn't sound properly.
It's funny, that the TV always sounds like it sounds to you. It always sounds like that to me.
Really? Well, the worst guy in the world for me is Shaquille O'Neal. Bless his heart. He's a great guy. I've met him. He's a great guy. But when he talks, to me, it sounds like,
Icy hot.
What?
Don't you want to just go run out and buy some icy hot right now?
Yeah, icy hot.
Icy hot.
Yeah. Right, good.
Let's jump back to the record, to weather. There was sports, right?
Good.
And then there was weather. Is that where news, sports, weather?
No fooling Mark Goodman. He's right there, man.
Yeah. Do you, when you look at these songs, is that where an album is generally a snapshot of where a band or an artist is at a particular moment? Do these represent that for you?
I think so. I mean, it's the one thing about it is it's diverse, I mean, there's all kinds of, there's kind of, one of the boys is kind of country, and, what Remind Me is kind of funky, and one's kind of rocky, and one's a ballad, one's a love ballad, and all that stuff. But, we've been fighting that our whole career. We've always been diverse, and we have diverse tastes. And I always say that as long as the song is true, and you can tell. I mean, when the guy says, I'm going to Kansas City, they got some crazy little women, and I want to get me one. We have to believe he's going to Kansas City. He knows about the crazy little women, and he wants to get him one. And then it's bingo, it's rock and roll, So that's the thing. And as long as it's a true sentiment, once you've been given the song, as it were, I think the song tells you how it wants to be produced and sound, and you just listen to the song.
Do you run into at all, and with these songs in particular, like remind me why I love you again, is that first line, the first verse. You don't cook, you don't clean, you can't operate a washing machine.
I love that.
Women, what do you think?
My band hated that. They said, you got to change the lyric. You got to change that.
I mean,
women are going to hate that.
Yeah.
You can't say that. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's
I'll be 70 years old this year. What do I care?
But there is, I think, for
the song explains. Remind me why I love you again. Opposites attract. The guy loves her. Mm-hmm. So she's just. It's a moment there. It's a moment that we all have with our loved ones.
Yes.
Where you go, ugh! Right? That's what it is.
Back to the relationship question. You're not married now?
I actually am still married.
You are still married?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've separated, but
I've
been separated for 14 years. But I'm still pals with my ex, and we're friends.
I mean, do you find that as a refuge? Not necessarily that particular relationship, but do you find relationships as a refuge for yourself, especially now as you have gotten older? I know that I find that I appreciate things about relationships more today than I did 25 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I enjoy my family and my kids. Like, we're getting kicked off. Oh.
These are the questions for you.
Oh, we have questions?
Yes,
Excellent.
We have questions from the audience.
No, I was going to say, my kids have been a constant source of inspiration for me. I mean, Power of Love was inspired by my kids. And latest with this struggle that I've gone through, my son and my daughter have just been so great to me. And, loved ones are everything. Family is everything.
Yeah.
It really is.
And but I guess you grew up that way, right? Because your family growing up was tight, yeah? I mean, I know your parents split up when
they were a little
young.
different. My family was a little different. My dad was a hard ass. I skipped second grade because I was so good at sandbox. So I graduated from 8th grade at 12 years old in June of 1963. In July of 63, I turned 13. And in August of 63, I went away for 4 years to prep school, coat and tie, all boys, and neither one of my parents ever attended. So I left home at 13, basically, And my mom was hanging out with the beatniks and stuff, so when I went home, she would hide everything from me because they were smoking dope and doing all that stuff. And so relationships, yeah. I mean, my dad was the kind of guy who really loved me. There's no question about it. But you'd never say, I love you, Dad. Mm-hmm. My kids, nowadays, we just love you, Dad, or we tell each other we love each other 6 times a day. Right?
Yeah.
My old man never, ever, ever. But did he ever say, I love you? And at one time later in life, I said, Pops, I call him Pops. I said, Pops, I love you, Pops. And I could almost hear him go, oh. So I just left that alone,
All right, let's see what we've got for you here. We've got some questions from the audience. This looks like Daryl's question. Can't see out there.
Daryl Hall here again.
I didn't get a chance to talk yet about your association with Nick Lowe. You produced for Nick Lowe.
Yeah, love Nick Lowe.
You sung on Dave Edmunds.
Love Dave
Necessary. And I mean,
so much to talk about.
Well, there is. And the whole Clover thing that, he used to be in this band Clover. That people remember Clover.
Now, see that? Those are every one of our fans. That's every single one of our fans.
I had that first record. I remember.
You're the one.
I am the one who bought that record. And the fact that I learned years later that you bailed on the Elvis Costello session. Clover backs up Elvis Costello on his first album.
I was just a harmonica player, and I had a week off. I mean, they worked us like crazy, and we had a week off, so I went to Amsterdam for the week while they cut the record.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of those big moments, though.
Elvis told me, he said, I got a couple songs you could play on if you want. I said, well, yeah, but I was going to have to hang out all week, so I didn't bother to do it. But Elvis wasn't Elvis then either.
Right. But is that when you met Nick Lowe? And Nick was producing Elvis for that first record.
Before that, Jake Riviera and Dave Robinson signed us to Phonogram Records, Clover that is, to Phonogram Records, and flew us to England thinking pub rock, country rock would be the next big thing. And punk hit. So we were in the wrong place, wrong time. So they introduced us to Mutt Lange, and we tried to make a very American record to compete with America, which knew nothing about punk yet.
Right.
But they signed. The first thing they did was sign us, and bring us to Britain. But as soon as punk hit, they started Stiff Records. They signed Elvis Costello. They already had Graham Parker.
Right.
They started Rat Scabies and the Damned, and all that.
Yeah. Boy, were you counter all of that stuff.
We were in the same office, and we had like a ringside view of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Watched it from the open anchor to everywhere.
It's a great moment. Daryl, back to your question here. In your opinion, what is your most underappreciated song?
Wow, what a good question. Let's see. What's my most underappreciated song? Well, I have a lot of them that nobody's heard of, I think. I like a song called Walking with a Kid on one of our albums. But it never was a single, so I don't know to say if it was underappreciated or not. I suppose, we'll say Walking with a Kid.
All right. Somebody asked a question that I wanted to ask. How'd you meet Phil Lynott? A part of that I know. I think I was at that show at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia, where the live
With Philip?
with Lynott.
With Lizzie?
Yeah.
Was I there at Tower?
Well, it's on the live record. You play on the live
but
record.
not on. That was done in Britain.
That was from
Live and Dangerous tour in Britain.
Yeah, Live and Dangerous. It was part of the Tower, I think, and part in Britain.
Yeah, but
different shows.
I didn't open for them.
You weren't at the Tower. Fair enough.
We did the British tour with them. We were on Phonogram Records, and Lizzie was on Phonogram, so we got billed our first tour. Not our first, but our biggest tour. When we first toured with Linda Lewis, and then I think Graham Parker maybe, or maybe Lizzie was our next tour. But we toured with Thin Lizzy, and all I knew was Boys Are Back in Town. I didn't know much, and they told me, you're really gonna like this guy, Philip Lynott. He's an amazing guy. And so, I'll never forget the first gig was in Oxford, and the curtain's down, and they told us, you're not gonna get a sound check. You don't get sound, this is Britain, nobody gets sound checks. It's tough shit, that's how we do it. It said, halfway through the tour, maybe you'll get a sound check, that's about it. I said, well, whatever. So now the curtain is down, and we're fiddling with our amps, trying to get set up because the curtain, and we're set up and trying to make sure the amp's on and checking my harmonica. And outside with the curtain, you can hear Lizzie, Lizzie, right? It's going on outside. We're billed as support. Thin Lizzy plus support. And now nobody's going to introduce us. So we asked our road manager, our only guy, our tour manager, our road manager. We had one guy, Frank. He's a great guy. Say, Frank, you got to introduce us. He says, okay, whatever, I'll introduce you guys. So now, boom, with Lizzie, the curtain calls up, and here's Clover. Here we are sitting there, like, and out comes Frank, and he goes, and they're still clapping. He goes, hi, everybody. He says, Thin Lizzy will be right out. And they go, whoa! But first, here's Clover. right? And now we start playing, and I mean, we finished one song, and silence is deadly, right? As soon as there's silence, shit starts flying at us, and they're booing it away, and it was just horrible. We finally got through most of the songs, and it was awful. And as I walked off the stage, right in the wings of the stage, the first guy standing there is Philip. And he's just standing there. He says, "Fancy, can I have a word with you?" I said, "Absolutely," you know. So we went into his little dressing room. He says, "Come to my dressing room." We get in his dressing room. He says, "Let me help you." And he started to work with me about he started explaining to me, critique the show, the set list, which songs he liked, which blah, blah, and to tell me about his audience. He says, "Look, these kids, they're coming off Slade, they're coming off this, they're aggressive, you gotta boom, you gotta go after them, you gotta boom." And he became my mentor, and he just took me under his wing. And for the next, well, really year or so, you know, I played on his solo records. I stayed with him on occasion in London. He would literally dress me out of his closet. We'd go down to King's Road, and he'd buy me stuff. And he was, Philip Lynott was an amazing guy. And he was on stage, he was the best hard rock performer I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you ever saw Thin Lizzy at their prime.
Yeah.
They were unbelievable. And yet such a big heart and such a sweet man. You know?
I think that there is a documentary there. His story needs to be told.
It's been done, and I've just done it. It's a major film, and it's just being released in Dublin. Now,
See, I was right.
And you know,
Is it a documentary or?
Yeah, it's a major film on Philip, and it's just coming out just now. You know, there's a statue of him in Dublin.
In Dublin, yeah.
Philip.
Yeah.
He was an amazing guy.
Robert Shapiro. Hi, Robert. Robert wants to know, what's the story behind the song Bobo Tempo?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. There's my least appreciated song, Bobo Tempo. Well, that was just a jam we did. You know, that was the reggae thing was big. So we were jamming on this reggae tune, and I made up the words about the town of Bolinas, California, which sits on, it's beyond Stinson Beach, north of Golden Gate Bridge, is a community rooted in the 60s where my mother lives, and mostly hippies. And so we just that was a jam we did in the studio, and I kind of wrote it, I think, on the spot, and we just recorded it. And then famously, my mother made a video of it, which was hilarious, because the idea was that, you know, one of the lines goes, "Strange cosmic forces, naked girls on horses. Yeah, Bobo Tempo. You know, minds they are reeling, their noses they are peeling. Bobo Tempo." And so my mom made this video of these naked girls on horses and surfers. And the surfers, right? And the surfers see the naked girls on the horses, and they meet, and then the next shot is the girl and the guy in the water making out, and then the horse rides off on the surfboard.
Damn, we could have used that on MTV.
And she had T-shirts made up and everything. And Bobo Tempo. It's still a big song in Bolinas. In Bolinas, they still know it. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. That's great.
And Bobo is slang for Bolinas. That's why people who live there call it Bobo.
So Bolinas Tempo,
Bolinas, California.
What was the most challenging hole at Pebble Beach?
Well, they're all challenging. Well, you know, 9 is impossible. 9 is
Daryl, you know.
9 is probably the hardest hole in the world. 9, 14, 10's hard. 8 is unbelievable over the canyon. They're all hard.
What's your handicap?
8.4.
That's
But I'm getting worse. I was much better. I'm not very good.
Maximum respect for. No, Max, you've been golfing a long time. I'm sure you've golfed with plenty of rockers. It is amazingly the sport of rockers.
No, the reason is that, if you do a lot of rock and roll touring and you're in, say, Ohio a lot, there might not be a lot to do. But if you're into golf, you're like in Mecca in Ohio.
Right.
I mean, there's great golf courses everywhere. And the nice thing about a golf course is you get outside, you get for a nice little bit of small walk exercise, and nobody bothers you. If you're a celebrity, you're out in the middle of nowhere with. So it's a great compliment for touring.
All right. Peggy wants to know what you see yourself doing in 5 years.
Wow. Breathing. I will be breathing in 5 years. That's all I can assure you of.
I feel like we're at a job interview all of a sudden.
I may try to. Everybody wants me to write a book, right? Everybody says write a book. But I've read some books. I mean, I love Elvis's book. It's really good, and Bruce's book is really good. And by the way, Rodney Crowell's book, if anybody's.
From 5 or 7 years ago, it's fantastic.
It's one. It may be the best one of them all. Really good. So I think I'd have to kind of have a go at it myself. And writing is, man, it's hard work. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I might try because it might be the only thing I can do.
I have somebody I want you to meet who's sitting down front there. She's an editor. She's worked for many, many publishing companies and has handled many, many biographies, autobiographies, etc. That's Stacy, my friend Stacy.
Really? We already we had dealt with one another? I can't quite hear that.
Yes.
Yes,
through Ed Victor, your agent.
Okay.
We actually had a deal for a while.
You must not have offered enough money. Because that's what gets my agent's attention. Well, we'll talk.
See? There we go. All right. Yeah. And I don't even want a percentage. My wife's saying, yes, you do. One final question here from, it looks like Caleb. As a musician, we've kind of touched on this, but as a musician, how do you maintain positive mental health when musical abilities are affected by things out of your control?
Wow. That's a really good question. The answer is not easy, but I remind myself constantly that there's so many more people worse off than I am. And to not appreciate that fact is almost a sacrilege. I have to be thankful for all that I've had in my life. I am a lucky guy, and I need to appreciate that. Sometimes it's not hard, sometimes not easy, but it's important.
Well, there you go. You're feeling okay, so I understand there's going to be a signing afterwards. Yeah. So Huey will be signing stuff.
And I do a real good Bruce Springsteen too, if anybody wants that.
So if you have Bruce's book.
Yeah. Oh no, I'll sign my stuff with Bruce. I don't care.
Oh really? That's even better. And I have to say, if you have not heard Weather, you need to go and check it out. If you have ever loved this man and his band, that is an album that you must have. And I know it's crazy, but own it, okay? You don't have to just stream the freaking thing, okay? Am I right?
Well,
buy it.
Well, and I'll just add to that I agree. I think that you won't. It's well worth your money, the Weather album, because I really honestly think it's among our best work.
I agree.
I really do.
I 100%. I mean, it seems disingenuous to say that in the current situation, but it's absolutely true. I work on a talk channel on SiriusXM. I've already played 4 songs from the record on a talk channel. because it's so good.
And Ideen Vaziri, who's a critic at the San Francisco Chronicle,
Yeah.
who knows our stuff because it's our hometown, called this record our best record ever.
That's pretty good. So I want to thank everybody for coming out to the 92nd Street Y and seeing my conversation with this gentleman, Mr. Huey Lewis.